Princess Zara lived on a beautiful planet called Luminous. Her world was nothing like Earth. Everything sparkled and glowed with soft, colorful lights. The trees had silver leaves that caught starlight, and the rivers flowed like liquid diamonds. Her people, the Luminari, were special. They could make light dance from their hands and create amazing patterns in the air. Zara was only 12 years old, but she was already learning how to use her light powers. Every morning, she would practice in the palace gardens. She could make tiny rainbows appear between her fingers and create glowing butterflies that floated around her head. Her parents, the king and queen, watched her with proud smiles. They told her that one day she would rule their peaceful kingdom. Life was perfect on Luminous. The Luminari never fought wars. They spent their time creating beautiful art with light and helping their planet grow even more magical. Children played games where they painted pictures in the air using glowing colors. Families would gather in the evenings to share stories, while creating light shows that danced across the sky. But everything changed on a dark day that Zara would never forget. Space pirates had been watching Luminous for months. These bad people traveled from planet to planet, taking whatever they wanted. They had heard stories about the Luminari and their amazing abilities. The pirates knew that beings who could control light were very valuable to certain collectors in the galaxy. Captain Vex was the leader of these pirates. He was a cruel man who cared nothing about the pain he caused others. He had destroyed many peaceful worlds before, but Luminous was special. He had already found buyers who would pay huge amounts of money for Luminari prisoners, especially young ones whose powers were still growing. The attack came without warning. Zara was in her room, practicing making light flowers bloom in the air, when she heard terrible sounds from outside. Explosions shook the palace walls. Strange ships filled the sky, firing weapons that turned the beautiful glowing trees into ash. She ran to her window and saw armed strangers rushing through the palace gardens. These pirates wore dark armor and carried weapons that shot deadly beams of energy. They moved quickly and efficiently like they had done this many times before. Her parents burst into her room. The queen's face was pale with fear, but she tried to stay calm for her daughter. The king held a light sword, an ancient weapon of their people that glowed bright blue in his hands. "Zara, you must hide." Her mother whispered urgently. "Go to the secret room behind the library. Stay there, no matter what you hear." But Zara was frozen with terror. She had never seen her parents look so scared. The beautiful lights that usually danced around her family had turned dim and flickering. Before she could move, the pirates broke down their door. Captain Vex himself walked in, his cold eyes scanning the royal family. Behind him came more pirates, their weapons pointed at the king and queen. "The famous royal family of Luminous," Vex said with a nasty smile. "Your light powers will make me very rich." The king stepped forward, his light sword glowing brighter. "You will not harm my family," he said firmly. What happened next would stay in Zara's memory forever. Her parents fought bravely, using their light powers to defend their home and daughter. The queen created blinding flashes to confuse the pirates. The king's sword cut through their weapons with beams of pure energy. For a moment, Zara thought her parents might win, but there were too many pirates, and they had powerful technology designed to fight against light-based powers. Special devices on their armor absorbed the luminary attacks and made them weaker. In the end, her parents fell defending their palace. Zara watched in horror as the two people she loved most in the world were taken from her forever. Her own light powers flickered and went out completely, overwhelmed by grief and shock. Captain Vex grabbed her roughly by the arm. "This little princess will bring the highest price," he said to his crew. "Young luminari are rare and valuable." They put strange metal bands around her wrists and neck. These devices felt cold and heavy, and immediately Zara felt her connection to light, becoming weaker. The beautiful glowing aura that had always surrounded her people began to fade away. The pirates captured several other young luminari from around the planet. Children who had been playing in the gardens or learning in schools were suddenly prisoners. They were all put in the cargo hold of the pirate ship, crying for their families and their destroyed home. As the ship lifted off from Lumenis, Zara pressed her face against a small window. Below, her beautiful planet was burning. The silver trees were now black stumps. The diamond rivers had turned to mud. Everything she had ever known was gone. The journey to the slave markets took several days. The young luminari were kept in small cages, given only basic food and water. The metal bands made them feel sick and weak. Some of the younger children cried constantly. Others, like Zara, became very quiet and still. Captain Vex would sometimes come to look at his prisoners. He would poke them with sticks and make them try to use their powers for his entertainment. But the suppression devices made it almost impossible. Where once Zara could create beautiful light shows, now she could barely make a tiny spark. "Don't worry, little princess," Vex would say mockingly. "Soon you'll have a new home with a very wealthy collector. He loves pretty light shows." Finally, they arrived at Nexus Station, a horrible place on the edge of known space. This was where criminals came to buy and sell things that were forbidden in civilized parts of the galaxy. The station was dark and dirty, with narrow corridors filled with suspicious characters from dozens of different worlds. The slave market was the worst part of Nexus Station. Here, living beings were sold like objects. Zara and the other luminari. Children were put in a display area where potential buyers could examine them like they were choosing pets. A fat, greedy merchant named Cruel bought Zara for a very high price. He specialized in what he called exotic entertainment. His plan was to make her perform light shows for his wealthy customers, who enjoyed watching rare beings use their abilities against their will. Cruel's warehouse was a nightmare. Zara was put in a small cage barely big enough for her to stand up. Around her were other captured beings from across the galaxy, all of them forced to use their natural gifts for Cruel's profit. Every night, Zara was taken out and made to create light patterns while rich criminals watched and laughed. The suppression bands made it painful to use her powers, but Cruel would hurt her worse if she refused. Her once joyful ability to make beautiful lights had become a source of misery. Months passed this way. Zara began to forget what it felt like to be happy. The bright, cheerful princess who had once danced in palace gardens was disappearing. In her place was a sad, frightened girl who had lost everything she ever cared about. She started to believe that this would be her life forever. No one was coming to save her. Her planet was destroyed, her parents were gone, and she was completely alone in a dark, cruel galaxy. But sometimes, late at night in her cage, Zara would look up at the stars through a small crack in the warehouse roof. She would remember her mother's gentle voice and her father's strong hands. Deep inside, a tiny spark of hope still glowed, so small that even she barely noticed it. That tiny spark was all she had left of the princess she used to be, and unknown to her, it would soon change everything. Captain Alex Chen had been flying cargo ships across the galaxy for 15 years. He was a simple man who liked simple work: pick up goods from one planet, deliver them to another, collect payment, and move on. He didn't ask questions about what he was carrying or who was buying it. That was the safest way to survive in his dangerous line of work. Alex had seen many terrible things during his travels, but he had learned to keep his head down and mind his own business. Getting involved in other people's problems was a quick way to end up dead in space. He had his own ship, the Wandering Star, and that was all he needed. But Alex carried a heavy sadness in his heart. 3 years ago, raiders had attacked the small colony where his family lived. His wife, Lisa, and their 8-year-old daughter, Amy, had been among the victims. Alex wasn't there when it happened. He was away on a delivery job. By the time he returned, Everything he loved was gone. Since then, Alex had become a different person. He spoke less, smiled rarely, and threw himself into his work. Flying from planet to planet helped him avoid thinking about his loss. But sometimes, in the quiet moments between star jumps, the pain would hit him like a physical blow. When Alex arrived at Nexus Station with a cargo of mining equipment, he planned to make his delivery quickly and leave. The station was a lawless place filled with criminals and outcasts. Decent people didn't stay there longer than necessary. After unloading his cargo, Alex decided to grab a quick meal at one of the station's grimy restaurants. As he walked through the marketplace, he tried to ignore the obviously stolen goods and suspicious deals happening around every corner. That's when he heard the announcement that would change everything. "Tonight only at Cruel's Entertainment Palace," a loud voice called out. "See the amazing Light Princess perform her magical show. Witness the last surviving royal of the mysterious Luminous world." Something about those words made Alex stop walking. He had heard stories about Luminous, a peaceful planet that had been destroyed by pirates. The idea that someone was making money from the tragedy bothered him, but he told himself it wasn't his concern. But curiosity got the better of him. That evening, Alex found himself sitting in the back of Cruel's dimly lit warehouse, surrounded by rough-looking customers who had paid good money to see something rare and exotic. When the show began, Alex felt his stomach turn. A small cage was wheeled out onto a makeshift stage. Inside was a young girl who couldn't have been more than 13 years old. She had pale blue skin and silver hair, clearly marking her as one of the Luminari people he had heard about. The girl wore a simple gray dress and had metal bands around her wrists and neck. Her eyes looked empty and hopeless, like someone who had given up on life completely. Alex could see that she was terrified, but trying hard not to show it. "Ladies and gentlemen," Cruel announced with a greedy smile, "I present Princess Zara of Luminous. Watch as she creates wonders with pure light." The crowd cheered and clapped, but Alex felt sick. This wasn't entertainment, this was cruelty. The girl was being forced to perform against her will, and everyone in the room was enjoying her suffering. Zara raised her hands slowly, and tiny sparkles of light began to appear around her fingers. But Alex could see that each movement caused her pain. The metal bands were clearly designed to make using her powers difficult and uncomfortable. As she created small patterns of colored light in the air, the crowd oohed and awed. But Alex wasn't watching the light show, he was watching the girl's face. In her expression, he saw the same lost, broken look that he had seen in his own mirror every day since losing his family. The performance lasted about 10 minutes. When it ended, Zara was quickly wheeled away while the crowd demanded an encore. Cruel promised them that the princess would perform again tomorrow night, and the next night, and every night after that. Alex left the warehouse feeling angry and disturbed. He tried to go back to his ship and forget what he had seen, but he couldn't get the image of the frightened girl out of his mind. She reminded him so much of his daughter Amy, not in appearance, but in the way she tried to be brave when she was clearly scared. That night, Alex couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about his own daughter and how helpless he had felt when he couldn't save her. Now there was another child in danger, and once again he felt powerless to help. But this time was different. This time, he was actually here. This time, he might be able to do something. Alex spent the next day learning everything he could about Cruel's operation. He discovered that the merchant kept his performers in a heavily guarded warehouse near the station's main docking bay. The security was good, but not perfect. Alex had spent years learning about different station layouts, and he knew that every building had weaknesses. The plan he came up with was risky and probably stupid. Alex had never tried to rescue anyone before, and he wasn't a fighter or a hero. He was just a cargo pilot who had gotten too emotionally involved in something that wasn't his business. But every time he thought about backing out, He remembered Zara's hopeless expression and his daughter's face. Maybe he couldn't save Amy, but he could try to save this girl. The next evening, Alex put his plan into action. He had spent some of his savings to hire a group of troublemakers to start a fight in the station's main bar. As he hoped, the distraction pulled most of the security guards away from Cruel's warehouse. Breaking into the building was easier than Alex had expected. His years of sneaking cargo past customs officials had taught him how to avoid security systems. Within minutes, he was inside the warehouse, moving quietly through the dark corridors. He found Zara in a small room filled with cages. She was sitting, alone in the corner of her cage, staring at nothing. When she saw Alex approaching, she pressed herself against the back wall, clearly expecting more cruelty. "It's okay," Alex whispered, pulling out the electronic lockpick he had bought earlier. "I'm here to help you." Zara stared at him with wide, confused eyes. In her broken galactic standard, she asked, "Why?" Alex paused as he worked on the lock. It was a simple question, but the answer was complicated. How could he explain that she reminded him of his lost daughter? How could he tell her that helping her might be the only way he could live with himself? "Because nobody should be treated like this," he said finally, "especially not a kid." The lock clicked open, and Alex gently helped Zara out of the cage. She was so weak that she could barely stand. The metal suppression bands had clearly been draining her strength for months. Getting out of the warehouse was much harder than getting in. Cruel's guards had returned from the bar fight and discovered the break-in. Alarms were ringing throughout the building as Alex carried Zara through the twisting corridors. They made it to Alex's ship just as security forces surrounded the docking bay. The Wandering Star was a fast ship, but it wasn't armed for combat. As they lifted off from Nexus Station, enemy vessels began pursuing them. Alex pushed his ship to its limits, weaving through the asteroid field that surrounded the station. Behind them, Cruel's security ships fired warning shots, demanding that he return their property. "Hold on," Alex told Zara, who was strapped into the co-pilot's seat. "This is going to get bumpy." As they approached the hyperspace jump point, one of the pursuing ships managed to get a weapons lock on them. Alex could see the enemy preparing to fire, and he knew that his cargo ship couldn't survive a direct hit. That's when something amazing happened. Despite her weakness and the suppression bands, Zara managed to channel enough power to create an electromagnetic pulse. The energy wave spread out from their ship and completely shut down the engines of their pursuers. Moments later, the Wandering Star jumped into hyperspace, leaving Nexus Station far behind. As the ship settled into its hyperspace course, Alex looked over at his unexpected passenger. Zara was slumped in her seat, exhausted from using her powers. But for the first time since he had seen her, there was a tiny spark of hope in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered in heavily accented galactic standard. Alex nodded, not trusting himself to speak. For the first time in 3 years, he had done something good. He had saved someone who desperately needed saving. It didn't bring back his family, but it felt like a small step toward becoming the man he used to be. As they traveled through the stars, Alex began to realize that rescuing Zara was just the beginning. Now he had to figure out what to do with a traumatized alien princess who had nowhere to go and no one left to care for her. But that was a problem for tomorrow. For now, it was enough that she was safe and free. Part 3. Building Trust and Healing. The first week aboard the Wandering Star was incredibly difficult for both Alex and Zara. Alex had never taken care of anyone before, especially not a traumatized alien child who barely spoke his language. Zara, meanwhile, was terrified of everything and everyone, including the man who had rescued her. Alex quickly realized that his small cargo ship wasn't designed for passengers. He had a tiny living area with just one bunk, a small kitchen, and a cramped bathroom. He gave Zara his bed and made himself a sleeping area in the cargo hold, but she refused to sleep there at first. For the first 3 nights, Zara sat curled up in the corner of the main cabin, watching Alex with frightened eyes. She wouldn't eat the food he offered, wouldn't speak, and jumped at every sound the ship made. Alex began to wonder if rescuing her had been a mistake. Maybe she would have been better off if he had left her alone. The breakthrough came on the 4th day. Alex was trying to repair a damaged circuit in the ship's navigation system when sparks began flying from the control panel. Without thinking, he shouted a warning just as Zara walked into the room. The sudden loud noise and the bright sparks sent Zara into a panic. She dropped to the floor, covering her head with her hands and speaking rapidly in her native Luminari language. Alex could see that she was reliving some terrible memory from the attack on her planet. "Hey, it's okay," Alex said softly, turning off the damaged circuit. "It's just broken equipment. You're safe now." But Zara continued to shake and cry. Alex felt completely helpless. He had no idea how to comfort a scared child, especially one from a different world with different customs. Then he remembered something his wife Lisa used to do when their daughter Amy had nightmares. Very slowly and gently, Alex began humming a simple Earth lullaby that Lisa had sung to Amy years ago. The soft melody seemed to have a calming effect on Zara. Her breathing gradually became less frantic, and she looked up at Alex with confusion, rather than terror. "My daughter used to like that song," Alex explained quietly. "Her name was Amy. She was about your age when—" He stopped, unable to finish the sentence. For the first time since her rescue, Zara spoke in galactic standard. "Your daughter is gone?" she asked in her halting, accented voice. Alex nodded sadly. 3 years ago, bad people attacked her colony while I was away working." Zara was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised Alex completely. "I understand your sadness," she said carefully, choosing each word with effort. "Bad people took my family too." That conversation marked the beginning of their real relationship. Over the following days, Alex and Zara began to share their stories with each other. Alex told her about Amy's love of drawing and how she would make pictures of all the different planets he visited. Zara described the beautiful light festivals on Luminis and how her parents taught her to create patterns that told stories. Communication was still challenging. Zara's galactic standard was basic, and Alex knew nothing of the Luminari language. But they worked together to overcome the language barrier. Alex would point to objects around the ship and tell her the galactic standard words. Zara would respond with the Luminari equivalents, which Alex tried his best to learn. Slowly, Zara began to trust Alex enough to eat regular meals and sleep in the proper bed. She was fascinated by human food and found Alex's cooking attempts amusing, even though she was too polite to say so directly. The metal suppression bands were still around her wrists and neck, making her weak and sick. Alex had tried to remove them, but they were locked with advanced technology he didn't understand. Every day, he could see how much they were hurting her. "These things are poisoning you," Alex said one morning, examining the bands more carefully. "We need to find someone who can take them off safely." Zara touched the bands around her neck. "They stop the light," she said sadly. "Make me feel broken inside." Alex made a decision that would change everything. Instead of continuing to random planets as he originally planned, he set course for New Haven, a frontier world known for its skilled technicians and few questions asked. It would be dangerous. The planet was on the edge of pirate territory, but it might be their only chance to free Zara from the suppression devices. As they traveled toward New Haven, something wonderful began to happen. Despite the suppression bands, Zara's natural resilience started to show through. She became curious about the ship and how it worked. Alex discovered that she had an amazing natural understanding of electronic systems. "Your people must be very smart with technology," Alex observed one day, as Zara helped him diagnose a problem with the ship's air recycling system. "We think differently about energy," Zara explained, concentrating on the diagnostic display. "Light and electricity are like family to us. We can feel how they want to flow." Even with the suppression bands limiting her abilities, Zara could sense electrical problems in the ship that Alex's instruments couldn't detect. She would place her hands near circuit panels and somehow know exactly where the problems were located. As the days passed, Alex began to see glimpses of who Zara had been before her capture. She had a quick sense of humor and loved to learn new things. She was brave and determined, even when she was scared. Most importantly, she had a kind heart that hadn't been destroyed by all the terrible things that had happened to her. One evening, while they were eating dinner in the ship's small galley, Zara asked Alex a question that caught him off guard. "Why did you save me that night?" she asked. "You could have been hurt. You could have died." Alex thought for a moment before answering. "I guess because I couldn't save my own daughter, and you reminded me of her. Maybe helping you was a way of helping her, even though it's too late." Zara nodded seriously. "In Luminari culture, we believe that when we help others, we honor those who came before us. By saving me, you honor Amy's memory." That night, for the first time since losing his family, Alex slept peacefully, without nightmares. Their arrival at New Haven was both exciting and terrifying. The planet was a rough frontier, world where people minded their own business and asked few questions. Alex found a technician who specialized in removing illegal restraint devices. No questions asked. The process of removing the suppression bands was more complicated than either of them had expected. The devices were designed to cause serious injury if tampered with incorrectly. The technician, a gruff woman named Dr. Vale, worked for hours with delicate instruments while Alex and Zara waited nervously. "These are some of the most sophisticated suppression devices I've ever seen," Dr. Vale muttered as she worked. "Whoever put these on really didn't want them coming off." Finally, after what seemed like forever, the last band clicked open and fell away. Immediately, Zara gasped as if she had been holding her breath for months. Color returned to her pale cheeks, and her silver hair began to glow with its natural luminescence. "How do you feel?" Alex asked anxiously. Zara smiled. The first real smile Alex had seen from her, and raised her hands. Tiny points of light began dancing between her fingers, growing brighter and more beautiful by the second. Soon, the entire room was filled with swirling patterns of rainbow colors that moved like living things. "I feel like myself again," Zara said, tears of joy streaming down her face. But their celebration was cut short when alarms began ringing throughout the medical facility. Through the windows, they could see armed ships landing outside. Someone had tracked them to New Haven. "Pirates," Dr. Vale said grimly, grabbing a weapon from her desk. "Looks like someone really wants your friend back." As they prepared to run for their lives, Alex realized that their journey together was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Part 5. Liberation and New Beginnings. The asteroid field around the ruins of Lumenis was like a graveyard in space. Broken pieces of the once beautiful planet drifted silently through the darkness, reminders of everything that had been lost. Alex carefully piloted the wandering star through the debris while Zara used her powers to bend light around their ship, making them nearly invisible. "There," Zara whispered, pointing through the viewport. The dark nebula, Captain Vex's flagship, was massive, easily 10 times the size of Alex's cargo ship. It was surrounded by 6 smaller escort vessels, all bristling with weapons. The sight of it made Alex's stomach clench with fear, but he could see the determination burning in Zara's eyes. "Remember the plan," Alex said quietly to the 3 mercenaries he had hired. "We wait for Zara's signal, then we board fast and find those children. No unnecessary fighting. We're here to rescue people, not start a war." Zara placed her hands on the ship's communications system and began channeling her power through it. Instead of sending radio signals, she was broadcasting patterns of light that only other Luminari could understand, an ancient form of communication her people had used for thousands of years. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then, suddenly, Zara smiled. "They're there," she said excitedly. "7 children, including Kale. They're in the lower cargo hold of the main ship. And Alex, they remember the old ways. They're ready to help." "What do you need them to do?" Alex asked as he maneuvered their ship closer to the dark nebula. "In 30 seconds, we'll all combine our powers to create an electromagnetic pulse. It should disable every ship in the fleet, but we'll only have a few minutes before their backup systems come online." Alex nodded and spoke into his communicator. "All teams, stand by. We go in 30 seconds. Zara closed her eyes and began concentrating, harder than Alex had ever seen. Light poured from her hands and spread throughout their ship's systems. At the same time, 7 points of light began glowing on the dark nebula as the captive children prepared to add their power to hers. "Now!" Zara shouted. The combined energy of 8 young Luminari created a wave of electromagnetic force that spread out from both ships. Every light on every pirate vessel went dark. Their engines stopped. Their weapon systems shut down. For a brief moment, the entire pirate fleet was completely helpless. "Go, go, go!" Alex yelled as he brought the wandering star alongside the dark nebula. The mercenaries used magnetic clamps to attach their ship to the pirate vessel, then cut through the hull with plasma torches. Within minutes, they were inside the enemy ship, moving quickly through darkened corridors lit only by emergency lighting. Alex had studied the ship's layout carefully, but navigating in the dark while knowing that pirates were probably trying to restore power was terrifying. Every shadow could hide an enemy, and every sound might be someone coming to stop them. They found the cargo hold exactly where Zara's intelligence had indicated. Inside, they discovered not just the 7 Luminari, children, but dozens of other prisoners from different worlds, all of them kept in terrible conditions by Captain Vex's crew. "Kyle!" Zara cried out when she saw a small boy with silver hair huddled in one of the cages. Her 10-year-old cousin looked thin and scared, but his eyes lit up when he recognized her voice. "Zara? Is it really you?" he asked in the Luminari language. "Yes, little cousin. We're here to take you home." The mercenaries worked quickly to open all the cages while Alex kept watch for pirates. The freed prisoners were weak and frightened, but they moved as fast as they could toward the escape route. That's when Captain Vex himself appeared, blocking their path with a group of armed pirates. The pirate captain looked older and more scarred than when Alex had first seen him, but his eyes still held the same cruel intelligence. "Well, well," Vex said with a nasty smile. "If it isn't my lost little princess and her pet human, did you really think you could steal from me and get away with it?" Alex stepped forward, positioning himself between Vex and the children. "These aren't property to be stolen. They're living beings who deserve to be free." Vex laughed. "How noble, but also how stupid. You're outnumbered and outgunned. Surrender now and I might let some of the children live." But Zara stepped up beside Alex, her hands beginning to glow with power. "I have a better idea, Captain. You're going to let all of these people go, and you're never going to hurt anyone again." "One little girl against my entire crew?" Vex scoffed. "I think not." That's when something amazing happened. All 7 of the rescued Luminari children joined hands with Zara, and their combined light grew brighter and brighter. The other freed prisoners, beings from a dozen different worlds, stood behind them, adding their support. "You're right," Zara said to Vex as the light around her grew to an almost blinding intensity. "One little girl couldn't stop you, but we're not just one anymore. We're a family, and families protect each other." The burst of light that followed was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. It wasn't just bright. It seemed to reach into Vex's mind itself. The pirate captain screamed and clutched his head as Every memory of every slave market, every contact, every hidden base was burned away from his thoughts. When the light faded, Vex collapsed to his knees, staring blankly at the wall. His pirates looked at their leader in confusion, unsure what had happened or what to do next. "Your boss can't hurt anyone anymore," Zara told them calmly. "His network is gone. His contacts are erased. He doesn't even remember where his hidden treasure is stored. You can keep following him if you want, but there's no profit in it anymore." One by one, the pirates lowered their weapons and walked away. Without the promise of easy money, they had no reason to fight. The journey back to the Wandering Star was surprisingly peaceful. Alex had expected more resistance, but word of what happened to Captain Vex had spread quickly through the ship. Most of the pirates were already abandoning the dark nebula, taking escape pods to nearby stations. As they prepared to leave the pirate ship behind, Alex realized they had a new problem. His small cargo vessel wasn't big enough to carry all the freed prisoners to safety. "Don't worry," said one of the older rescued prisoners, a skilled engineer from the Centauri system. "The Dark Nebula's engines are coming back online. We can fly it ourselves and turn it into a rescue ship." And that's exactly what they did. Over the following months, the former pirate vessel became a symbol of hope throughout the galaxy. Alex and Zara led rescue missions to free other enslaved beings, while the ship became a mobile sanctuary for those who had nowhere else to go. Kale and the other young luminari grew stronger and happier with each passing day. They learned to use their powers not for the entertainment of criminals, but to help their new family build a better life among the stars. Alex found that helping others gave his life a meaning he had never expected to find again. Every child they rescued reminded him of his lost daughter Amy, but instead of making him sad, it made him proud to carry on her memory through acts of kindness. 3 years after the rescue at Lumenis, their floating sanctuary had grown into a small fleet of ships. They had rescued hundreds of prisoners and shut down dozens of slave markets. Governments that had once ignored the problem began offering official support. One evening, as Alex watched Zara teaching a group of newly rescued children how to repair starship engines, she came over and sat beside him. "Do you ever regret rescuing me that night?" she asked. Alex smiled and shook his head. "Never. You saved me just as much as I saved you." "How so?" "You gave me a reason to be proud of myself again. You showed me that one person really can make a difference, even when the problem seems too big to solve." Zara nodded thoughtfully. "My parents used to say that the brightest lights shine in the darkest places. I think they would be proud of what we've built together." Looking around at all the different beings who now called their ship home, former slaves who had become a chosen family, working together to help others, Alex knew that Zara's parents would indeed be proud. And somewhere among the stars, other families were sleeping safely because two unlikely friends had refused to give up on doing what was right. The little alien princess had lost her kingdom, but she had found something even more valuable: the power to create hope in a galaxy that desperately needed it. Part 4. The Quest for Justice. The escape from New Haven was terrifying. Alex and Zara barely made it back to the Wandering Star before Captain Vex's pirates surrounded the medical facility. As they lifted off, enemy ships began chasing them through the planet's atmosphere. But this time was different. With her suppression bands removed, Zara's powers had returned in full force. As the pirate ships fired at them, she placed her hands on the ship's control panels and channeled her energy into the systems. "What are you doing?" Alex asked, struggling to pilot through the intense chase. "Making us faster," Zara replied, her hands glowing with bright light. "Trust me." Suddenly, the Wandering Star moved like it had never moved before. The engines hummed with new power, and they shot through space at incredible speed. The pirate ships couldn't keep up, and within minutes, Alex and Zara had escaped into hyperspace. When they were safely away, Alex stared at his ship's readings in amazement. "How did you do that? The engines are running at twice their normal capacity." Zara smiled tiredly. "I told you, light and electricity are like family to my people. I can help them work better together." Over the next few weeks, they traveled from planet to planet, trying to stay ahead of the pirates who were still hunting them. But Zara was becoming restless. She had her powers back, and she felt stronger than ever. Most importantly, she had started having dreams about other luminary children calling for help. "Alex," she said one evening as they sat in the ship's galley eating dinner, "we can't keep running forever." "What do you mean?" Alex asked, though he could see the determination in her eyes. "There are other children like me out there. Other luminari who were taken when my planet was destroyed. They're still prisoners, still suffering. I can feel them sometimes in my dreams." Alex felt a chill of worry. "Zara, I know you want to help them, but it's too dangerous. Captain Vex has an entire fleet of ships and hundreds of fighters. We're just 2 people in one small cargo vessel." But Zara had made up her mind. "My parents died protecting our people. If I don't try to save the others, then their sacrifice meant nothing." Alex understood her feelings, but he also knew how impossible the task seemed. Still, over the following days, he found himself helping Zara research Captain Vex's operations. They used the ship's computer to access information networks, and Alex contacted some of his old smuggling friends who knew about pirate activities. What they discovered was both encouraging and terrifying. There were indeed other luminari children being held prisoner, at least 7 of them on Vex's main ship, the Dark Nebula. But the ship was heavily armed and always surrounded by escort vessels. "There's something else," Alex said as he reviewed the intelligence they had gathered. "According to my sources, Vex is planning to sell all the remaining luminari to a collector on Centauri Prime. If he does that, we'll never be able to find them again." Zara's face went pale. "When?" "2 weeks from now. The buyer is some rich person who wants to create a private display of rare beings for their estate." The thought of her people being treated like exotic pets made Zara angry in a way Alex had never seen before. Her hands began glowing with fierce light, and the ship's lights flickered in response to her emotions. "We have to stop this," she said, firmly. "I don't care how dangerous it is." Alex spent the next several days trying to talk her out of it. He explained how many things could go wrong, how likely they were to be captured or worse. But Zara wouldn't listen. She had found a purpose beyond just surviving, and nothing Alex said could change her mind. Finally, Alex realized that he had a choice to make. He could either help Zara with her impossible mission, or watch her attempt it alone. And he knew that if she tried to rescue the other children by herself, she would almost certainly fail. "Okay," he said one morning, surprising Zara as she studied star charts of Vex's territory. "If we're going to do this crazy thing, we need a real plan." Zara's face lit up with hope and gratitude. "You'll help me?" "I can't let you do this alone," Alex replied. "Besides, someone needs to keep you from getting yourself captured again." They spent the next week developing their strategy. Alex used his contacts to gather detailed information about the Dark Nebula's defenses and patrol patterns. Zara studied ancient luminari texts that her people's computer archives contained, looking for techniques that might help them. "There's something here," Zara said excitedly one evening, pointing at symbols on her computer screen. "My ancestors wrote about combining light powers across great distances. If multiple luminari work together, they can create electromagnetic pulses strong enough to disable entire fleets." "That sounds promising," Alex said. "But how do you coordinate with the other children when they're prisoners on a heavily guarded ship?" Zara smiled. "Luminari can communicate through light itself. If I can get close enough to broadcast the right patterns, the others will understand and respond." The plan they finally settled on was incredibly risky. They would hide the wandering star in the asteroid field near the ruins of Lumenes, where space debris would mask their ship's signature. When the dark nebula arrived for its regular patrol of the destroyed planet, Alex would pilot their ship close enough for Zara to make contact with the other children. "The hardest part will be getting close without being detected," Alex explained, as they studied the tactical data. "Vex's ship has sensors that can spot us from a long distance." "Leave that to me," Zara said confidently. "I've been practicing with the ship's systems. I think I can bend light around us to make us nearly invisible." Alex had seen enough of Zara's abilities to believe her, but he was still worried. "Even if we can disable their fleet, we'll still need to board their ship and rescue the children. That means fighting through armed pirates." "I know," Zara said quietly. "But I also know that my cousin Kale is on that ship." "He's only 10 years old, Alex. He's been a prisoner for almost as long as I was." The mention of her young cousin made Alex's heart ache. He thought about his own daughter Amy and how desperately he would have wanted someone to rescue her if she had been captured instead of lost. "All right," he said finally, "but we're not going in unprepared. I still have some credits saved up, and I know where to buy the equipment we'll need." They made one final stop at a weapons dealer on a frontier station. Alex bought protective gear, emergency medical supplies, and a few small but powerful tools. That might help them get through locked doors. He also hired 3 experienced mercenaries who asked no questions and worked for cash. As they prepared for the mission, Alex noticed that Zara had changed. The frightened, broken girl he had rescued was gone. In her place was a determined young woman who carried herself like the princess she had been born to be. "Are you ready for this?" Alex asked as they approached the asteroid field around Lumenis. Zara looked out at the destroyed remains of her homeworld with sadness but also resolve. "I've been ready since the day you saved me," she said. "It's time to save the others." As the dark nebula appeared on their sensors, Alex realized that their real adventure was just beginning. Everything they had been through together had led to this moment, a chance to turn the tables on the pirates who had destroyed so many lives. "Here we go," Alex murmured as Zara began channeling her powers to hide their ship. "Let's bring those kids home."